Today's video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon. Snap, crackle, pop. So, shame about Filmstruck. If you haven't heard, Filmstruck was a video streaming site developed by Turner Classic Movies that showed classic films, art films, foreign films, a solid chunk of the Criterion Collection, a specialist service providing things the more populous Netflix and Amazon don't provide. Its shutdown wasn't because it wasn't making money, it wasn't because it was poorly received. Everyone I knew with a Filmstruck account loved Filmstruck. No, the site's end came because of restructuring from the parent company Warner Media. There's a lot of think pieces about Filmstruck's announced closing, about the fallibility of digital media, digital preservation, and those are discussions worth having, but I want to talk about a more broad subject that Filmstruck is just the most recent casualty of: the struggle of taking the arts and giving them a mass media platform. Arts funding and distribution have been a constant debate in political circles since it ever became a thing. From Mr. Rogers testifying before the Senate to save funding being slashed by Richard Nixon for the Public Broadcasting Service in 1969, to Peter Hoekstra using The Watermelon Woman, a film directed by Shel Dunier, a gay woman of color, to petition the National Endowment of the Arts to be more selective in the projects they fund in 1997, to the Trump administration just straight up expressing interest in the elimination of every arts program on the books. Now, it always seems to be the Republicans that hate art. Hey, be sure to vote in the midterms. But those are just the political fights to allow the arts to be funded and seen in public media. Private companies, like Warner Media, have a hand in building the platforms and finding out if there's a market for the arts. Filmstruck was one such platform, and Warner Media decided it wasn't worth it, even if people liked it and it was making money. But Filmstruck wasn't the first arts platform built by the Warner Company. Filmstruck was Warner's attempt to sell the arts in a young streaming service market. Alpha Repertory Television Service was Warner's attempt to sell the arts in a young cable television market. Though, in fairness, it wasn't exactly Warner Amex's baby. Now, the cable industry started as a technological alternative to getting your standard network programming, but by 1981, it was becoming clear that the real appeal of cable was in specialized, unregulated television channels, which ran a risk of leaving behind the three big names in network television: CBS, NBC, and ABC, the big three that dominated the airways for the first 30 years of television history. Well, they weren't too keen on that. And at pretty much the exact same time, all three companies began developing their own original cable stations. And all three of them went in the exact same direction. Let's make a channel for the arts. CBS made CBS Cable, NBC made the Entertainment Channel, and ABC decided, these names aren't dumb and unwieldy enough, and thereby created Alpha Repertory Television Service, a name solely designed so that its acronym could be ARTS. ARTS was created as a joint venture with media conglomerate the Hearst Corporation, who at the time was primarily known for newspapers and other print publications. Hearst had recently hired Raymond E. Joslin, who had been in the cable business back in its just different technology phase, to bring the company into the growing cable market, and it was Joslin who suggested the partnership with ABC.
Within 6 weeks, I had come to the conclusion that I thought that Hearst, on its own locomotion, would not go into this business. And I had learned that Hearst and ABC had been good friends for years. So I went to Frank Bennick. I said, Frank, I'm coming to you because I think this is an opportunity for us to pair with someone, with a company that we respect and have, years and years of great personal relationships between all of us. And he went to Leonard Goldenson, and he said, we're thinking of the same thing. Why don't you talk to my guy, Herb Granith?
The main idea they settled on was creating a 3-hour block of the arts that would repeat over the course of the day, or the course of the night, as it eventually ended up being. These blocks would have alternating names like The Creative Drive, or The Performer's World, or Of Plays and Playwrights, and were then filled with a mix of original content and pre-existing documentaries and performances. For example, on Friday, November 27th, 1981, Arts aired a block called America, Where It All Happens, which, I ain't exactly feeling that, but okay. The block had 4 segments. The first was a music lesson with Cassie Berberian. Berberian being a mezzo-soprano and composer known for her fun projects like performing the sound effects out of a comic book or doing operatic-type covers of Beatles songs.
I think I'm going to be sad. I think it's today. Yeah. The man that's driving me mad is going away. He's got a ticket to ride. He's got a ticket to ride. He's got a ticket to ride, but he don't care.
The next segment was a profile on Roy Lichtenstein, a pop artist known for his replication of the comic book style. And by replication, I mean plagiarism, but that's neither here or there. At least Andy Warhol was transformative, you hack. Sorry, I have opinions. Anyway, the next segment is, you screwed over Ruth Heath's, Roy. That was Ruth Heath's art, and you made millions ripping it off, and you didn't give him a cent. Okay, the final two segments of this block was the making of a song, a title too generic to find anything useful on, and Visions and Images, an interview program profiling active American photographers. This show, at the very least, was produced by ABC with arts in mind. Sometimes Arts just showed full-length operas or stage plays, some of which ABC produced themselves, sometimes getting some big names involved. In 1982, director Robert Altman, of MASH and Nashville fame, came in and directed two one-act plays written by Frank South, Rattlesnake in a Cooler and Precious Blood. Altman was starting to do theater after a handful of his films had failed in the box office. It's something I always promised myself I would do. After that process with Popeye, I decided I'd better figure out what I really want to do. I've fiddled on the corner where they pay the most coin for a long time. Now I figure I'll fiddle on the corner where I have the most fun. Another show that showed up on Arts in 1982 was Nightcap, Conversations on the Arts and Letters, where guests, usually artists in the same field, oftentimes writers, would sit in a black void and discuss and sometimes debate their vocations. Here's a clip with science fiction writers, including the late Harlan Ellison, and you know you're in for a treat when Ellison is in the room.
You're also prescient, you're prophetic, you know. I mean, the fact is, the world itself today has, in a sense, caught up with some of the stuff you've been imagining.
No, that's horse puppies.
Huh?
That's bullshit.
Is it? Go ahead.
Look, when science fiction first began as a separate genre in this country in 1921, it came into being almost by accident. It was a fluke. A guy named Hugo Gernsback started using stories in Science Experimenter magazine. But it was looked on as such a bastard child of literature that people were ashamed of it.
So ABC and Hearst had their little thing developed. It was just a matter of finding a cable package to carry it, which is where Warner, Amax, and Nickelodeon entered the story. Nickelodeon, being a channel exclusively aimed at children, didn't have much use for the late evening, early morning hours, and was struggling to find something to put there. Originally, they had the premium movie channel called Star Channel, which you had to buy Warner Amax's advanced cable package to watch. But that didn't really work due to a conflict of audience. You were paying more to watch movies at midnight, but the people interested in getting Nickelodeon were the parents of school children, aka people who have to get up at 6 in the morning and don't want to watch a movie at midnight. So Star Channel left the slot and became its own full 24-hour The Movie channel. And for most of 1980, nothing aired on Nickelodeon between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. We're still years away from Nick at Nite. Well, Arts needed a home, so ABC and Hearst approached Warner Amax about using that space.
And the Arts Network was a 3-hour evening service that was on the tail end of Nickelodeon. Herb and I went over to Jack Schneider. Anyway, we went over to talk with Jack and asked if we could lease space on the back end of Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon at that point in time was a daytime service. The assumption was that kids went to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Perfect for us. Nickelodeon, kids programming, arts programming, following that at 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night made perfect sense. So Jack made the following proposal. He says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a 3-year deal. First year, I won't charge you anything for the transponder. Second year, I'll charge you $1 million. Third year, I'll charge you $2 million.
So we said, yeah, and we shook hands and we had a deal.
Now, Cy Schneider didn't have a say on what went up on the channel after Nickelodeon went off the air. It wasn't his call. But Arts most definitely fit in with what Schneider was doing with Nickelodeon way more than Star Channel did. A lot of Arts programming wouldn't look out of place on PBS and was largely family-friendly, excluding the odd Harlan Ellison. And Schneider had his whole PBS You Pay For thing, so the two fit together in a much more meaningful, cohesive package. Except for the odd opera, everything on Arts was shorter than a movie, which made it easier for the late-night parent to find what they wanted. And if they missed it, the fact that the programming blocks cycled 3 times a night meant there was probably a chance to re-catch it. In fact, in their first year, Arts was a bit stretched for content, and they actually aired the same blocks 2 days in a row. That's 6 chances to catch that Roy Lichtenstein profile, you fraud! Sorry. Beginning in April of 1981, Arts advertised itself as the first nightly cable television service devoted to the performing and visual arts. Yes, if you are super specific, you'll always be the first at something. Knacks is the first Nickelodeon history show on YouTube created by a guy living in Idaho who likes to collect hot sauces. See? Nothing to it. According to Liz Oliver, the manager of ABC Video Enterprises, the production company that made all of Arts' original content, the target demographic for Art was light television viewers between the 25 and 45 years of age who watch television more than twice a week for special events, many of whom are opera fanatics. The ratio of male to female viewers is fairly even, as against the viewers of the public broadcasting system, which are primarily female and over 55. Ah, yes, Alpha Repertory Television Service, the hip PBS alternative. Oliver estimated roughly 7 million views collected as of spring 1982, but I wasn't able to confirm that outside of anecdotal evidence. If true, that's not bad, especially for a late-night arts channel piggybacking on a failing children's network. Warner Amax had 1.1 million cable subscribers in 1980, so I guess you could get that number if all of those subscribers watched Arts 7 times each. However, like Nickelodeon, it was a non-commercial entity. Its value was determined not by its views, but by how many new cable subscribers it enticed. Warner Amax gave ABC the first year of their transponder space for free, but for year 2, they would have to pay $1 million to stay on board, which they did. Then for year 3, they would have to pay $2 million. That's when the Nickelodeon deal stopped being sustainable. Ray Joslin and the companies he represented had 3 options. 1. Shut it down. 2. Renegotiate the deal with Warner Amax, and they might have had some leverage in that. 1983 was not a good year for Warner Amax for reasons we'll get into in a later episode. 3. They could take a risk and turn Arts into a full-fledged channel. No more Nickelodeon, just try to make it on its own. That would be a challenge, but also not the worst idea. Again, Warner Amax was in a bad place, and for a while there was a real chance of Nickelodeon getting shut down. And if Nickelodeon got shut down, Arts would get shut down. It wasn't a sinking ship yet, but maybe we should get off just in case. Arts was actually doing better than any of the competition at this point. CBS Cable shut its doors after just a year and change, and NBC's The Entertainment Channel was closing up in early 1983. But the Entertainment Channel did have one thing going for it: contracts with the BBC for imported programming. Yes, Prime Minister reruns were very tempting, so ABC and Hearst bought the Entertainment Channel's assets, including those BBC contracts, and merged it with Arts, transforming it into the Arts and Entertainment Network. Plot twist, this was a secret origin story for A&E this entire time. Arts turned into A&E officially on February 1st, 1984, and broke off as its own channel on January 1st, 1985. 33 years later, it's now your go-to place for hoarders and storage wars. Obviously, a lot happened with the channel, but this is a Nickelodeon history show, and the channel no longer became relevant to the first network for kids, so we'll leave it at that. With A&E's absence, Nickelodeon was back to square one and find something to fill that evening time slot with. But now, Cy Schneider was out and Geraldine Laybourne was in. And Laybourne had a few ideas. I think it says a lot about me that I found Alpha Repertory Television Service very charming and appealing. Apparently, cheap, boring interviews with photographers and behind the scenes at the ballet are like my jam. I'm very much an arts liberal. I care about arts funding and arts preservation and art discussion and arts distribution. And so seeing this early attempt to bring the arts to the mass market medium of cable television was very engaging. But even when A&E broke out on its own so that it could play by its own rules, it failed to live by that standard. The arts just aren't marketable. Obviously, arts was not a good fit for what Nickelodeon would become. It would have clashed too much with Laybourne's eventual Nickelodeon. But while Cy Schneider's Nickelodeon was making the wrong choices with its green vegetable attitude, arts was pretty much the best possible thing you could pair it with. Nickelodeon and Star Channel felt at odds with each other, but Nickelodeon and arts felt like the kids menu and adults menu, respectively, of a nice semi-formal restaurant where they have 300 types of wine, but the kids' fish fingers also comes with a salad. I'm getting a little lost in my metaphors. Point is, arts was good. It had its own value, and it was good for Nickelodeon as it was at the time. The name was pretty stupid, though.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time, we finally reached Nickelodeon 1982 with a show so hard to get a hold of, I bought a film reel. Like a 16mm film reel. I can't wait to show you what's on it. Today's shout out goes to Arts Money, Raising It, Saving It, and Earning It by Joan Jeffrey. As you probably guessed, this 1983 book is about funding for the arts, and includes some extensive contemporary information on Alpha Repertory Television Service and its competitors. Well, we're done with Nickelodeon 1981. That was quite a ride. Thank you for taking it with me. If you like Knacks, perhaps consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar is a step closer to keeping this show sustainable and improving my production values. Someday, I'll have a new computer that might even be powerful enough to run After Effects. You can also like the video, share it with friends on social media, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for the latest updates, follow me on Twitter, follow the Pop Arena Reddit, join the Pop Arena Discord. Man, I am all over the place now. Or at least, leave a nice comment. Those always lighten up my day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.